everyone. Welcome to the first module of the 6-week Affiliate Mastery Challenge, where things start to get technical. So what we're going to do is go through setting up a server, automating the actual deployment, the configuration, and getting started with actually connecting to that server and using it for later activities. So we've tried to make everything as streamlined and as easy as possible for you guys. If in doubt, however, remember that we have technical support on hand, so just ask them for help with any of the issues that you actually run into. So to start off, what I'm going to do is just go through the basics of what we're going to do today in this module and some others, as well as some precursor technical information. So first up, we're going to set up a server. This is going to be a VPS, or a virtual private server. It's going to be with Vulture as our main provider, or with Linode. We're going to use a tool or a platform called Commando to actually automate a lot of this deployment so that you don't have to really worry about the base configuration of your server, best practices for security and setup, and all those kinds of things. We kind of automate that for you. Now, once we get everything set up, the primary tools you're going to need for actually connecting with that server are mRemote NG for SSH connections and FileZilla. So once your server's deployed, you would connect to it by SSH. The default port for this in general would be port 22, and you'd connect with something like mRemote NG. We would use that for making system level changes, so stuff that would have to do in a console, like making changes to the actual system configuration, adding sites, although we don't need to do that via the console in this case because we have Commando, installing new software and various modules, rebooting the server, all this kind of stuff you tend to need to do via an actual console or something that has this kind of connectivity to your server. Then we use FTP purely for file management, like uploading landing pages. And for that, we just use something like FileZilla. Now, before we get started, I want to go over a few things which are useful to understand about how your server is constructed and what it does before you kind of get into actually rolling these out. As you'll see, like a general trend in this course, I try to teach various basic things which I think help people actually understand not the inner workings of things, but basically what's going on, which is important, especially when you're trying to outsource and you're trying to get other people to do things for you. It pays not to be completely ignorant of how things work. So when we deal with servers, we often talk about a stack. The most common is probably the LAMP stack, and the other one that is very common is the LEMP stack. This is just an acronym for the basic set of software and components that make up the operations of the server. So Linux is just an operating system like Windows or Mac OS X. Apache and Nginx are web servers. MySQL or MySQL is a database system. And PHP is kind of a piece of software that sits there and processes things in certain ways. So what do all of these do? Linux, obviously, the operating system like Windows, Android, Mac OS X, and so on. Apache, Nginx is the web server. Now, this is probably the most important part to you. The web server is the piece of software that sits there on the server, running at all times, that's just waiting and listening. So what it's doing is it's waiting for someone to try and contact that server and connect to it, and who's looking for a site, right? And the web server, as the name kind of implies, is the piece of software that serves that back and controls the delivery of files and content for the various websites that you have there. So the web server is kind of the core piece of software that you would configure when you're adding sites, when you're wanting domains and subdomains and so on, to actually navigate to and direct to, the various sites and files that you actually upload to your server. Without a web server, there's no way of there's no straightforward, easy way of actually communicating all of those files and so on to people on the outside, in the outside world, people in the public internet. Now, MySQL is just a database engine. He runs databases. That's what he does. That's his job. There's a lot of different database engines out there. There's different types of databases. MySQL is what you would call a relational database, where information is stored in structured tables. So just imagine a table which has 20 columns, for example, and each row you add is a single entry which has a lot of different properties and pieces of data with it, right? It's very, very structured. That's a relational database. And that has various advantages and disadvantages in terms of the way that you actually interact with that data, the performance, and so on. The other most common one is NoSQL, or non-relational databases. And for this, you can kind of imagine saving a string of data in a text file where it's just lots of data separated by commas, for example, just in one line or something like that. It's less structured. It's more like small snippets of data being added every time. PHP stands for Hypertext Preprocessor, and as the name might imply, it does some pre-processing. So many of you will know HTML, right? And you'll know that means hypertext markup language. PHP is basically an engine which will process content on your server before it actually gets delivered to the end user. So you might have PHP code that gets executed whenever a user tries to load a page. The PHP engine is the system that sits in the background, processes that before it delivers to the end user, and gets done. That gets done through Apache or Nginx, right? So this kind of code and these kinds of files, they're essentially dynamic, often always changing, and technically, well, they're kind of uncacheable in the sense that they're meant to be dynamic. So PHP is your friend there whenever you want to do something dynamic or individual or at time per load event or for whatever the user is doing. Okay, so moving on. The end game that we have here is to deploy a server using a LEMP stack. So that stack is going to be Nginx, MariaDB, which is essentially like MySQL but just better. PHP FPM is the PHP preprocessor we're going to have on there. You don't need to know or care what the differences between these are. And the operating system is going to be CentOS 6, 64-bit. There's a lot of different Linux systems. There's Ubuntu, there's Red Hat, there's CentOS, there's Debian. There's all these different kinds, and they're kind of based around a few core systems. CentOS is just the one that we're going to use. Most people are kind of most comfortable with a specific one over any other, and I also like CentOS. Okay, so we're going to set up the server. We're going to use various tools, various recipes, as we call them, with Commando. And then later on, in a later module, we're going to install our tracker. Now, there's going to be documentation with all of this, but I'm going to walk you through from start to finish anyway and split this into a few little modules based on the various things that we're actually doing. Okay, so let's get started. First off, let's open Firefox and get ready to do things. Okay, what is this? Browser profile changed. What am I on? Real profile. Okay, I'm going to actually disable this add-on because I don't really like things potentially doing stuff when I don't want them to be doing so. So I'm going to disable him. Goodbye. Okay, so let's open Commando, Vultr, and Linode. So Commando is kind of our automation center, which you can see here. Vultr is a VPS provider or just a server provider, and Linode is one as well. So I'm going to log into all of these systems, and I'll let you guys register your own accounts. For all of these, there will be information in the vendor spotlight area. We do have various discounts and coupons and information on each of these, so make sure you go check that out before you actually sign up. Okay, so here I am logged into Commando. I don't actually need to use this yet, so I'm going to go to Vultr instead. What we want to do first is buy a server, and I'm going to buy a server on Vultr and Linode to show you both of them, that both of them work. Okay, so I'm just going to log in, deploy new server. Okay, where do I want to go? That Vultr is a very nice interface. I like it. Okay, I kind of just want the cheapest one because this is just a test. We're going to do the one that's closest to me, which is in Asia. I want CentOS 6 actually, so where is that? Nope. Time to search. Custom snapshot. Where are we? There we go. Okay, I just tapped that and I get 6. That wasn't that obvious. There we go. You want CentOS 6. Make sure it's not CentOS 7, otherwise things won't work so well. I'm just going to use a $5 VPS. So you don't have to spend much here. Obviously, you're going to get better performance within limits when you upgrade a little bit, but to just start out, you only really need the $5 a month actual VPS. I think the discount or the bonus from Vultr that we've kind of found gives you something like $50 for, or 50 or 60 for 1 or 2 months. So you can probably splash out and get the $20 a month server immediately rather than, penny pinching at the beginning. They charge per hour, not per month, so you can actually deploy it and then destroy it and only pay per hour that you actually used. So do take advantage of that if you do need to test things and so on. And in this case, I'm going to use what am I going to use? Yeah, I'm going to use this $20 one. Anyway, I'll just continue. Okay, you don't really need any of this, but you can if you want. We obviously can't use that. I always turn on IPv6 just because I can. We don't need to use a startup script. Ignore that this exists here. For SSH keys, this is where you can add a key for key-based access to your server. That is something that we have documentation for. You're not going to need this at the moment. If you do this, it will usually just pop up with a window for you to actually add a key, or you can kind of add the key in here. Again, we don't really need that. Just make sure everything's fine. Cool. Okay, server hostname. Let's call this test server 1 and deploy. And there it goes. So I'll leave this open. Now let's go to Linode. In Linode, if I want to make a new one, I believe I just need to click Add a Linode. Again, I can choose whatever I want. I'm going to use Japan if I can, or Singapore. What are the differences? There's sometimes differences in the actual pricing and so on between different areas, but in this case not. I'm going to use Singapore in this case. I'm going to get this cheapest one here, and I'm going to add them. You can see here it's being created. What is this one doing? So the thing with virtual private servers is the way that they're constructed is very flexible. So they're kind of running in a plastic modular environment where the resource allocation can be scaled and changed on demand. And because of this, you can kind of expand, contract, create, and destroy them very, very quickly. They're kind of like an exceptionally good middle ground when it comes to server environments, though the performance it'll never be at the level of dedicated servers, really. But when it comes to scalable infrastructures, where you need to be able to respond to demand and expand and contract to have a sort of maximum efficiency in terms of what you're paying for, then virtual private servers are absolutely perfect. Okay, so that's all set up and running. I'm going to click Manage. Please note your server may still be finishing. Now, in this case, there's a few things that you're going to need here. The main thing is the IP address, but you're also going to want the username and the password. So here you can see show password, copy password, so on. I don't care about showing you the password here. So there you go. You can see it's that there. Easy. So that's something you obviously want to save somewhere securely or change if you want to, but in any case, we're going to need that. What is Linode doing? This one here is being created. Is it finished? It is, and it's brand new. So I'm going to click on that guy, refresh this guy. Okay, so here it says success Linode initial configuration. Our Linode's brand new. It's not ready to do anything because we haven't created a disk and actually deployed an image. Basically, we have a new computer and we haven't installed Windows. So I'm going to deploy an image. I probably need to create a disk, but it might actually make me do that when I try to deploy an image. I'm going to choose CentOS 6.5. Disk size is 5, is fine. For the root password, this is where I'm going to use LastPass, Alt-G to generate this password. I'm just going to paste it up here for safekeeping at the moment. No, that's a terrible idea actually. I will paste it in here. There we go, the greatest security. There we go, deploy. Will this give me an error? I don't know. Nope, it made a disk for me, so that was pretty straightforward. Here you can see it's creating the distribution, it's doing various things as you'd expect, so we'll leave that guy alone. This one, what is he doing? Is he finished yet? Not quite yet. So what I'm going to do is leave these two to set up. They should only take a few minutes, and then once they set up, we will move forward with Commando. Okay. So after a few minutes, it looks like Linode is ready to go. So I'm going to click boot, and away we go. There we go. So on first boot, it's probably going to take a little while as it sets up various operating system things. If we go to the Vultr virtual private server, it still has this message. It's probably just giving us this warning because it's been a certain amount of time. If we click view the console, what happens? This is exciting. Okay, so it looks like it's actually set up. If we hit put in root, it's going to actually ask for a password, so it looks like it's fine. So I'm going to get out of here. So now what I want to do is actually log in using mremote-ng and check that I can actually log in via SSH to these servers before I do anything. That's just to check that they're kind of operational and responding. So I will minimize this, find my mremote-ng. Okay, I'm going to put him over here. Oh, I just realized I don't have my pointer focus. I'll turn this on for you guys. Okay, open up this. I'm going to put him over here. And then open this. There we go. I quite like Windows' new window scaling kind of features. Quite cool. Okay, I want to get rid of these guys. I'm going to rename this or re-input the details for this Linode one. So I need the IP, obviously. Question is, where is that? I can't see it right here, so I'm going to go back to the Linodes section. Which one is it? It's a very good question. It's the second one. I believe it is. So it's that one. Yeah. Hey, you can probably find the IP in here as well, in one of these sections. There it is right there. So it's definitely the 210 one. Our username is root. As for our password, I generated that before. Put this in here, and then double click to load. We do want to trust it. And there we go, we're in. If I write dir, for example, there is nothing because I'm in my home directory. I do cd up. I can see various files on the server. So that's all sorted, that's good. So I'm going to close that. I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to rename this to Vultr. I'm going to use the IP of the Vultr virtual private server instead. And I'm going to copy this password, throw it in here, and away we go. I'll trust that one. And once again, we're in. So if I do dir, there's probably nothing there. If I go up a directory, dir again, there we go. So I'm in my servers, we are sorted, and they are ready to go. So what I want to do now is get these servers actually set up and configured to some appropriate state for installation of our tracking system, for example, and so on. And to do that, we're going to use commando. So for that, we have some documentation, which you will see attached to these modules. And I'm going to open that right now. There we go. I'm going to move that to the side once again. There we go. Okay, so in commando, I'm going to go to servers and I want to add these servers before I kind of do anything. We obviously need them to be able to interact. So there's some quick links here for adding servers, but I want to do it by SSH because it's just kind of more universal and convenient. So I'm going to click add server. I want to call this Vulture Server 1. Hopefully that's unique. I don't need to put it in a group or anything. I don't care about any of the server tags and so on. For the address, obviously it's this IP address here. Make sure that there's no extra spaces and so on around it. For the username, it's root. And then the SSH port, 22. And I don't think the password is listed here. Away we go, add server. Yes, I do want to connect with root. Highly recommend using sudo instead. That's a good question. Let's look at our documentation. Does it say anything about this? Nope. Okay, I'm just going to add as root for the moment. I will let you know if sudo was a better choice. But I don't think so. Just use root. Okay, SSH not connected. Click authenticate for the server. I need to add this key. So the instructions here are pretty straightforward. Execute the following command locally to add the public SSH key to the server. So you don't really need to know too much about how this actually works, but what you can do is copy this to clipboard for the Vulture server. So I'm going to open mremote-ng again, connect to my Vulture server. I'll connect to both actually. And in here, I'm going to right click to paste. There we go. Then I'm going to hit enter. Do you want to add this key? Yes, I do. You have to write yes, hit enter. Warning, permanently added this. Reverse mapping checked, failed possible break-in attempt. You can ignore that. It's asking for the Vulture password, which kind of makes sense. I'll just switch to Vulture there. So we're going to go back to Vulture, copy this. And here for passwords, when you write things, nothing happens. So if I write 1, 2, 3, you can't see it. I'm going to backspace that out. That's just a security feature of Linux. I'm going to right-click once to paste and hit enter. There we go, and that should be done. So if I go back here and click OK, it should try and check again, and it's connected. So I know it's a little bit complex, but it's relatively straightforward once you've done it kind of once. Okay, now we want to add the Linode. I'm actually going to reload this page. Okay, I'm going to add a Linode. Oh, I'm at the limit, that's why it's locked me out. Okay, I'm going to delete this one because I don't need it. I'm going to delete this original one here as well. So for Linode, you can actually click this button here and you can add your API key, or you can just do it manually like I did just now. Let's use the API key because it's kind of fun. So I'm going to go to Linode. And then where am I going to go? To get my API key, I guess I'm going to go to account and find API keys wherever they are. Nope, account settings. Where are you? Maybe it's in Linodes or in my profile. There we go, it's in my profile and then API keys. Hello, load please. Why can't I load you? Oh, duh. Okay, API keys. There we go, commando's already in there. So I want to copy that. Often when you add an API key, you can't get access to it again. It's kind of a one-off thing that you have to save somewhere, which is why I can't actually get this here. So I'm just going to make a new one called Commando V2. expires never, create the key. Please record your new key. This is it here. It will not be showing again, so do be mindful of that. Call this Linode API key. There we go, for safe keeping. Okay, let's go back into Commando, add this API key. All this will do is log into Linode essentially and find the actual servers there that we want to import. Which one do we want to import? We want the right IP address. If I go to my Linode here, it's 210, so I want this bottom one. So I'm just going to import this one. I'm going to call it Linode test. Don't need to put it in any group. SSH username, root, port 22, import. And you see here it's automatically added tags based on like the provider, the actual location of the virtual private server, and the amount of RAM, I suppose. And we're all done. Now for Linode, it should probably say it's not connected as well because we need to authenticate. So these public SSH keys are a way of authenticating during logins they're basically like credentials, but it's much better than using passwords. You can use these yourself for actually logging into your servers, but a password's kind of easy to start out. So what we're doing when we do this actual approach here is essentially giving Commando authority to log into our server to do various actions. It doesn't mean that people at Commando can just kind of go into your server and do whatever they want. It just means that the programmatic system here can communicate without having to re-authenticate itself with the password every time. So I'm going to Linode, I'm going to right-click to paste and hit enter. And yes, I do want to do this. I'm going to need the password for the Linode password. I have it in this text file. These are things that you should save in LastPass. I'm going to right-click, hit enter, and hopefully it's done. It's taken its sweet time. Okay, so I just skipped a little bit because for some reason that was just sitting there not doing anything. Basically, I just tried it. I disconnected, reconnected, and tried again. It sat there for about 30 seconds and then it was done. So for whatever reason, that just took a while. I have no idea why. But then it was all sorted. So now I have both of my servers connected via Commando, and I can do various operations and use these things called recipes to deploy and configure my servers. So I'm going to go into both of these, open them in new tabs if I can. Okay, I'll open Linode. Oh, I can't actually open them here. Okay, cool. Get out. What I'm going to do is go to one of these. Actually, what I'm going to do is open the documentation that I'm meant to be following first. So I'll close this, open this PDF. There we go. And what I'm going to do, scroll down to the section about server setup. And you can read these and follow these. The first recipe we'll create and execute is the main server setup one. So I'm going to open this, get rid of that password. Here we go. So this is one of our recipes that we've created to help you with deploying these servers. There's various pieces of information here on what this actually involves. And for those of you who know anything about bash commands, you'll kind of be able to understand what's going on here. What we want to do is go to recipes in Commando. So let's go over here, go to recipes. This will load your recipes list. Ignore all the ones I have here and any of the public ones that you have. What I'm going to do is go add recipe. And this is where we need to put various things in. For the name, I'm going to call this server initial setup. Now, again, all the instructions are kind of in here. For interpreter, I want to use bash. For notes, I can put whatever I want. Now for the recipe here, we want to add this text. So what we want to do is go back to this recipe here. We don't want to copy this because it's kind of formatted and in HTML. What we want to do is click raw to get to the raw text. It's very good practice to do this for anything you're copying that's going to be used in a console command or anything like that. You want to make sure you don't have any formatting issues. This here, for example, this single quote, if that was an apostrophe or it was like a curled quote mark or something like that, that can actually cause a difference in what the command does. So we want to use the raw text. Back here, paste this in, and then click Add Recipe. Okay, that is all sorted. What is the next thing we want to do? Now you click Execute, and the server setup should start. Okay, so we want to go to that initial server setup, wherever it is there. So I'm going to open that. And what I want to do is execute it. So here's the execute button here. Hit that. And I want to do it on a single server. I want to do my lino test, recipe, initial server setup, notes, deployment, while screen capping, execute. And execution is running. Please wait and don't navigate away from this page. Yes, sir. Okay, and now it's giving me some sort of log here, I suppose. Now click execute. The server setup should start. As mentioned, this will take up to 40 minutes. If you want to check, you can use setup completion check, however, allow at least 20 minutes before you do that. Okay, so this is running. I don't actually want to do anything with this. In actual fact, fun piece of trivia, the maximum amount of time an execution may run here was actually 20 minutes, and because our server setup takes closer to 40, Commando actually raised this to 60 platform-wide for us. So there we go, Commando delivers. So I'm going to leave that open, just because I don't really want to, I kind of want to see if anything changes here. I'm going to open recipes in a new tab. I'm going to go to initial server setup. I'm going to go to execute on a single server, do the vulture server instead, put some interesting notes in here, and execute. Okay, there we go. So I don't know if this is going to show any log or anything. We'll see in the future. So what I'm going to do is wait an hour for this to actually go. What this is going to be doing is configuring and installing Nginx, PHP FPM, MariaDB, FTP related stuff, security related stuff. So it's kind of doing all of this in the background for us, which means it will basically condense down the entire server setup and configuration into a few button clicks. Now, once this is done, there's very little to actually do. I think almost everything comes down to our later videos. Yeah, so that's pretty much that. Once this finishes, we can continue on to the other stuff. If you have any issues with actually doing this, just talk to our actual tech support within the AMC platform and we'll help you out. Hopefully from me kind of going through this really slowly, it's clear to all of you who are not that comfortable with server setup that this is actually really easy to do because of the actual tools that we have set up. And Commando's not free. I believe it's something like $12 per month, I think, for 1 or 2 servers. I can't quite remember. We do have a discount, which you'll see in the vendor spotlight area. And for something like $10 a month or for free or whatever the base plan is, for this amount of streamlining, it's really worth it. And of course, you can always use it and then stop using it once your server's set up. But I would highly recommend having something like this on standby for set up of your various servers because it is that useful. If you want to set up lots of servers, you can of course connect a server, run a setup, run your various things, and then remove it from Commando and then do another one. It's kind of more like your dashboard and central control point for running automated actions. And there's a lot of interesting recipes that you can actually use here. There's a lot of public ones. And if you have any functions that you want to actually run, whether it's adding a domain, removing a domain, setting certain security settings or reverting those security settings, whatever it is, let us know and we can make recipes for this to actually help you guys out. Right, anyway, that's it for this module on server setup. I'll leave you to move on to the later ones where we set up a website, email, and all these various things in preparation for actually running campaigns being more professional with our AM approaches, and installing a tracker. That's it for this module. I'll see you in the next one.